Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our latest in the series of revenue recognition webinars. This is an update on SAP RAR 1.3 and new service pack SP03. We will get started in just a couple of minutes. I know several people have mentioned they are having some challenges dialing in, so we'll give folks an extra minute or two to join the conference. Please stand by. All right, let's get started. Thank you, everybody, for your patience in waiting. Welcome to our August webinar in our ongoing webinar series on revenue recognition. This will be an update on SAP RAR 1.3 and SP03. So I want to thank everybody for joining, and I know it's the end of the year, and all of you are eager to see and learn what's going on with SAP RAR 1.3. I have on the line with me Pete Graham, a friend and colleague from SAP, and Pete will be talking about the latest updates and features on SAP software. So just a couple of quick housekeeping items. Just a reminder that the webinar is being recorded. We will have it available tomorrow for you to download from the website if you wish to share with your colleagues, and we encourage you to do so. You are welcome and encouraged to ask questions throughout the webinar. You can do that by clicking over here in your console under the questions area, asking questions. Either Pete or I or someone from our team will answer those questions real time. If they require a more detailed answer, we will follow up with you directly and answer those questions. You can tweet us at #RevRecReady. We encourage you to do that and continue the dialogue in the RevRecReady area. Also, to remind you, you can download previous webinars from our homepage, and we'll give you some links at the end of the webinar to do that. I'm John Froelich. I am your moderator for today's event. I'm joined, as I said, by Pete Graham, who is what we'll say Mr. RAR. And Pete will be talking again, as I mentioned, about RAR 1.3 and SP03 and some of the issues and challenges, as well as talking about some of the blogs and information that's available to you about RAR. I'll do a brief overview at the end of our implementation process, talking about Radar, as well as highlighting some of the disclosure reports that we make available to you as we get through this process. And then we'll do a quick wrap up and any Q&A that's at the end. So in the interest of time, I will turn it over to Pete. And while I'm doing so, what I'd like to do, everybody, is while Pete's getting set up and ready to go, I am going to run a quick poll. So what we'd like to know is, where are you specifically on your RevRec project? So start voting now. Have you started your assessment? Meaning, have you done your accounting assessment? Have you just started? Are you using SAP or involved in a project but are using an older version of SAP RAR 1.2 or 1.1? You're on 1.3, nearly finished, or you're a accountant or a Bramasol employee and it's not applicable to you. We'll take about a minute or so to finish that voting, and we'll let you know the results.
So we're waiting for that, John. Do you have to give me some kind of presentation rights so I can share the screen, or not?
I thought I did that already. Did you get a click?
I'm trying to hit the show screen button, but it's not letting me.
All right, let me take back control, and then I will send it back to you. Let's try that again. Oh, hang on a second, Pete. I have to close the poll in order for you to share.
Okay. Okay.
So with a minute and a half in,
we'll just wait. We'll just wait.
Voted.
We'll just wait.
So with the results are finished. 81% of you voted. Thank you for that. 40%, Pete, have started their assessment. Of the remainder, 14% of people are doing a project but are on an old version, 1.2. 14% are on 1.3, and 9% nearly finished, and 23% are non-applicable. So a lot of folks on here are in the started assessment phase, so that's interesting to know. So with that, you should have control of the screen, and we'll turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, John. Thanks, everyone, especially carving out some time. We're hoping to give you a short update on kind of the latest with RAR. So let's see if I can share the screen. There it goes. It looks like it's working, John. Let me know when it comes through.
I can see your screen, Pete.
All right, now let's see. Do I have to hide any of this stuff? I hide the phone. All right, now let's go into slideshow mode. All right, so we're not going to. I'm assuming most that folks that have joined on the phone know about RAR already and know the basics. I mean, essentially, a couple of slides. I mean, essentially, you know, when we started this journey, it was all about automating and simplify revenue accounting, and that hasn't changed. And you know, every release, we just came out with RAR 1.3 SP03, so Support Pack 3. That's the latest release, and that's what I want to talk to you today about. Is just kind of the latest on that release. It came out about 2 weeks ago, and you know, we'll talk a little bit about it here after. I just want to clarify the roadmap and just make sure everyone's on the same page there. But anyway, our mantra hasn't changed. You know, I think the thing that's interesting is that this regulation, especially from the U.S. perspective, and I print out the U.S. version, it's very long. It's about 700 pages. And so what we've seen is that, you know, the complexity of that 700 pages seems to get a little bit more every day, right? We have people bringing up new things or new ways of doing it. So, you know, we've been at this a long time. I won't kind of go through that, but, you know, we've been looking at this issue since 2010. That's when we started the project for the new solution, which is now RAR. And, you know, we've been rolling it out internally as well. I mean, the solution covers the 5 steps, and it can do both the current accounting and is built for the new accounting. But it's not going to do everything, right? And that's one of the things that, you know, a lot of customers will ask us about. You know, if I'm starting now, if you're starting your assessments now, what can I get out of RAR by the end of the year? And we'll talk a little bit about this. I mean, certainly RAR has, you know, the ability to pull in data from multiple systems. It's got a rules framework. It has a way of managing the trial postings that come out, so you don't push them right into the balance sheet. And this is where, you know, as customers look toward going live next year or being compliant, RAR can assist in those efforts, and it could be, maybe RAR is going to help with one division or one set of revenue types of documents, but you may not be able to get all of them in for a variety of reasons. Might be just not enough time, or could be we may not cover that specific area. So anyway, we're seeing a lot of hybrid solutions out there, just because there's so much of that 700 pages that you have to cram in, and we won't be able to cover all of those 700 pages out of the box. It's one of the things we wanted to reinforce today. So let's talk a little bit now that we're talking about what version of RAR we need to run with ERP. It's ERP Enhanced Act 5 or higher. We just came out with Support Pack 3 for RAR 1.3, and that came out August 11th. We've got about, I think, 7 or 8 customers that have installed it and started doing some testing or have done the regression testing, and so far the results are positive. We've not seen, certainly we haven't seen any major issues. There was always a couple minor issues, but so far it's actually good in the sense that the changes and improvements that we made, we think are pretty robust. The notes around there, I don't have them listed, but within that support pack there are some notes, and the note numbers that, if you want to kind of look at it, kind of what are some of the more important changes, I would say, are notes 2506397 and 2514365, and so they talk more about some of the changes we've done on the quality assurance side specifically, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But the initial feedback from those 7 or 8 customers is good. We've also had several partners install the solution in their demo environment, and of course some of those partners are also working with those customers, the ones that are kind of the early adopters of that support pack, and so far so good. So we can never promise we won't get more issues down the road, but I mean, so far we're very encouraged by what we're seeing. We're getting some good feedback. So that's kind of the latest on the support pack and kind of our initial experience with it. I just want to go through kind of, on the statistics. I mean, we're over 1,000 members in the global user group, and we are going to see if we can have a meeting here. I think probably in early October is the current proposal that we need to discuss with a couple customers, see if they're willing to host it, because we have had that offer, and so we're trying to see if we can just schedule that. The number of downloads continues to increase. I mean, we're over 500, but the number of production projects, or projects that customers have reported that they are working on and expect to move that project into production at some point, is now about 170, and so that's up quite a lot since we had the last user group meeting. It's up by probably about 100 since May or June. I think that's a reflection of just, we're getting closer to the deadline for many customers, which is January 1. And what I'll stress here in a couple minutes is just how to approach that, right? If you're trying to get live by the end of the year, what are the the guidelines and best practices for doing that? And RAR is not going to be able to do everything, so you're going to have kind of a mixed plan of what is done in RAR and what's done outside. You might have different workarounds, but anyway, we'll talk a little bit more about that based on a blog that I recently published. In terms of the success, I mean, I count 10 customers plus, and we're getting reports that it could be 15 or 20. It's really hard to say because we have a lot of customers that have downloaded their software and kind of did the projects without a lot of knowledge or feedback from SAP, and then they'll come back and report. So call it a dozen or so live customers, and as we move into early next year, we're expecting to see that jump to several dozen or more, right? We have a lot of customers that are getting ready to go live on RAR, and again, that may not mean, well, it most likely means they're not doing everything automatically in RAR, but they're going to utilize RAR to assist them in their efforts to be compliant on IFRS 15 or ASC 606, even some of the current standards like ASC 605. So I just wanted to kind of refresh on the roadmap. I mean, not a lot has changed since we presented this. I think we presented the first time back at the user group meeting in March. really the things that have changed is we've shipped a couple support packs on 1.3. We shipped support pack 2, I think, back in May, and then we just in August shipped number 3. So again, the 1.2 release had cost recognitions and project systems, and those are big improvements. The 1.3 release has single currency improvements and really what we would call now quality assurance, right? So the last couple support packs have really tried to spend time on consistency checks and improving the way that we manage the data within RAR, just to make sure that we make it more fault tolerant and make it more robust. As we look to the future, we still have a long roadmap. There's several things that we don't cover yet, and there's the things we'd like to add, like public cloud, right? The cloud, certainly you can use RAR in the private cloud, but some people ask us to put it in kind of more of a multi-tenant SaaS model, so that's always something where we have on our kind of our radar. But the roadmap is still being refined. I mean, based on more kind of real world use of the support pack 03, we're basically just waiting a little bit longer to see if as we get through all different industries, we see the stability, or I should say we have kind of the positive experience we've had so far with the initial 7 or 8 customers. So I think we'll wait a little bit longer, make sure that support pack 3 is as positive as we think it will be, and then we'll starting to focus on the roadmap and figure out kind of what will come in the next release. Now that next release currently is still probably going to be called 1.4. It will probably come out next year. I would call it, let's call it the mid part of the year at this point, because we're kind of getting into the late summer, and so it will take us 6 or 9 months at least to get the release out. So that puts us kind of middle of next year, and then we have to figure out kind of what will be in that release. I would say right now I'm probably more focused on some performance and making sure that the systems are as robust and kind of as good as they can be, and we'll have some functional improvements, but it probably won't be a large set of functional improvements at this point. So we'll come back to you probably hopefully by the October user group meeting with more information on the roadmap. But this is the latest, and we're not expecting. I know I had a customer ask me, like, are you expecting major changes in the next release on the way that we calculate SSP, and the answer to that is, at this point, we don't think so. At this point, that functionality is fairly stable in the product, and we would, at this point, would plan not to probably enhance that area of the product for the next release. So that's just some more tidbits that we have. So what I now want to switch to is really in terms of the project, how you approach it. And we've had a lot of these questions about how do I approach a project like RAR, especially if I'm just starting. I literally have had customers in the last month ask me, what do I do if I'm starting RAR today? What can I do? So we're working on this question right a bit. So I posted a blog on this a couple weeks ago, basically saying, do you have any silver bullets for IFRS 15 or ASC 606? And unfortunately, the short answer is no. I mean, just summarizing, we can send this link out later to the blog, but with 700 pages, it's really hard of a regulation. It's really hard to cover all of it out of the box. In fact, we would argue that it's no solution can do this out of the box. And what we found is now we've got about 170 projects underway. We've got a lot of feedback, and these projects are very complex, and so they're taking longer than everyone thought they would or thought they could. It turns out that we really think the best practice is still to use RAR as that basis for doing a proof of concept, right? Because the process, what we've heard from a lot of customers and partners, is that since RAR is rules-based, you're really forced to try to distill the accounting into very simple logic statements, right? And so that forces you to make decisions on the accounting and then try to implement it. And along the way, if you have questions on how to implement it, you can talk to your accounting experts or your accounting consultants that are working with you, right? And so all that needs to be fairly fluid. So certainly the co-located nature of the team and the way they need to iterate back and forth, talking about each issue before they implement it in RAR is very important, because we find that that's the right type of dialogue to get to the right answer, whatever that is for your company's goals in adopting the new revenue standards, and also your timeline, right? Because they're what we see even in the same industry, because a customer is unique, their milestones and timelines are unique, their requirements literally are very unique, even though we see a lot of similarities. For instance, in telco, we'll see a lot of similarities, but again, there's a lot of unique things that are specific to each telco that we work with. It ends up being that essentially the project is unique for each company. So these are best practices that you need to work with in terms of the tools and methodologies, right? To do a proof of concept first, we still think, even if you're short on time, so even if you're trying to roll out by the end of the year, and we have had this happen, we still recommend that you do a proof of concept as long as you can. We recommend 6 to 8 weeks. Coming out of that, then you'll know what RAR can do, what RAR can't do, what you may not be able, or what you can get done in the time left, and what you cannot. And basically, you'll be able to come up with a plan of attack in terms of, you know, what's in RAR, what's outside RAR, what's manual, what's semi-automatic. I mean, and literally what all your processes will have to be, both inside of RAR and out, you know, to meet your timeline and requirements. And so that's what this blog is all about. And so we talk about here, you know, about, you know, doing the assessment. And so I think, John, you said it was roughly 40% said they had done an assessment.
That's correct.
So that's
still
good.
Doing their assessments, yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. And you want to take that assessment now and then try to implement it in the POC, because if you're an SAP Financials or S/4HANA Finance customer, you already own RAR. So it's a good way to just, you know, install it and start trying it. And really that proof of concept, as you run different scenarios through, you start with one and then add another. The rules can build on each other. They're kind of cumulative in nature, and you start to figure out making those choices. I talked about, you know, the logic and the gray areas in the accounting have to be broken into black and white statements or logic. You start to make progress, and it starts to become clear what you can get done with RAR and what you can. And at the end of that 6 to 8 weeks, now you're much better off understanding, okay, with the amount of time I have left before I want to adopt the standard or before I want the system to go live, what can I reasonably accomplish, right? Both within RAR and without, or outside of RAR. That's important. So again, unfortunately, there are no silver bullets. This is what we've seen project after project works really well. And, you know, just keep that in mind. And again, you know, I had a controller approach me in June that thought they could do an IFRS 15 project in 3 months. And unfortunately, that's not what we see in practice. I mean, we're seeing, and John, you can chime in here too, because I think you've seen some of this. I think we're seeing at least 12 months, you know, for the average, or call it a minimum. And, you know, many of the projects are going to be longer than that.
Yeah, we're seeing 9 to 12 months. It really depends. You know, and Pete, some of it depends on how much, you know, companies use standard SAP out of the box and how much they're willing to accept standard practices, right? So I know you talk a bit about that. Another interesting thing I'd be interested in your comments on, Pete, is I've had, you know, thanks to our great sales team and our consultants, we've had some great conversations over the past several weeks with companies that thought or believed early on in the process that they could use spreadsheets or modify things like VF44 and SD RevRec to say, oh, I can do this. And all of a sudden, they realize after spending a great deal of time, that's probably not the best approach. You speak to probably even more customers. Are you hearing kind of the same things?
Yes. I mean, let's put it yes. I mean, there's always, I think, a desire, you know, on the part of our customers to do it as simply as they can, right? I mean, you're under tremendous pressure. Everyone's short for resources. And from my accounting nature, because I've been in the finance role where, you know, you're working in finance and people come to you. You're a cost center, right? You're trying to get things done, but you never want to, you know, you're not trying to spend a lot of money. It's I think human nature, and even it's I think human nature for people to take anything and say, can I use this tool to do something else? I mean, the example I gave at another time is when they had that Amazon Prime Day that I think it was the Echo Dot came up for sale, and they had a speaker on it, and my wife immediately thought, hey, I could use that speaker also with my phone and play music, right? I mean, so all of a sudden people are, you know, it's just nature that you see something and you want to use that tool for maybe more than what it was meant for. And I think we see that here in compliance. People are always looking for ways to take what they got and adjust it and make it work. But what we found is that, I mean, that it's a lot more difficult than you think. And we've seen a lot of customers try this and they get so far, and then eventually they kind of reach diminishing returns, meaning that, you know, they make quick progress and they make some progress, but then they realize that as they peel the onion layers back to the standard, they may not have covered certain pieces and they have to go back, and all of a sudden now it's getting much more complicated than they thought. And so that's really what we've seen over the last 7 years, and that's why we recommend the proof of concept, because what we want our customers to realize and understand is take advantage of all the learnings we've done. I mean, literally, we have been building 7 years worth of experience now into the solution, and you know, there is a lot of experience in there, right? So take advantage of it, do the proof of concept, see what we've already tackled, and then cross them. You know, the idea is to cross some things off your list, and then you'll still have some things on that list, but hopefully you'll cross some core ones off. You know, like the 5 steps, right? You don't have to worry about that. We handle performance. I mean, so there are a lot of things that we do that would be good jumping off points if you really feel there's still other customizations that you need to make because of the way your business works, right? But yeah, that's what we've seen. I mean, going it alone or I mean, you know, the network effect here, and we now have, you know, almost 200 projects, all those customers looking at the same set of software, feeding in feedback, us making improvements. I mean, that's like a network effect, right? And that's something that you can't get on your own, right? And so that's, you know, so we would say that's a tough road to look at. That's why we recommend the POCs. So you can try to understand exactly for your situation what experience you can leverage that we've already gone down through and offer, you know, via the solution. And hopefully we'll meet some of your core requirements, and then you can check those off and worry about the other ones that are not met out of the box, and hopefully that's more productive for you. So. Okay, so I think this is good in the coverage on the silver bullets. Again, just try to go in with your eyes open. I mean, that's really what we wanted you to realize. The other blog here is that we did do an update from this blog from last year, and it got a decent number of views. I mean, it got about 3,000 views or so. And what we did is we summarized all of the features of RAR, and now we updated that for 1.3. And the area I wanted to highlight your attention to is that literally what we found after we shipped 1.3, and actually we saw some of this before, but it really became, I think, more clear as we got some more maturity in certain projects and size in terms of we needed to focus more on quality assurance. So we've introduced some things in Support Pack 2 and then additional improvements in 3, and those are the notes that I read off earlier about how the solution works, and we tried to make it more robust and more fault tolerant. So some examples is that we see a huge correlation between the data quality and the results in RAR. And so if the data quality is poor, we see that the results in RAR could be poor. And so we've started to add a lot of kind of checks or kind of features that will kind of assure that if some of the data comes in that's of poor quality, we'll kind of hopefully detect it or flag it for you so that you get kind of some notice that, hey, this quality is not so good. You need to make sure you take a look at these results because they may not be what you think they are, right? And so that's what we spent some time on SP2. That got some slight improvements in 3 as well. We added the way that we managed the data because we noticed that there was some ways that, as you're managing the data within RAR, you might not get kind of the exact result as quickly as you would want. So the way that you manage rules, you could potentially have something being saved, and you may, by accident, not realize that you may not have saved it in the right sequence. We kind of went back to those situations and made sure that, if you're going to write different rules, that basically they're going to work in a much more rigid manner so that, you get kind of a fault-tolerant result, which is really what you want. So again, it's another kind of way that we try to foolproof, or we try to make sure that if you do come across some poor data quality, or you've written some rules and maybe didn't think about carefully the timing of how some of that data is being stored, that we make sure that it's timed all properly so that the system results are basically as good as they can be. So those are some of the things that we have learned from those 170 projects, and we've now made some improvements and tried to build those improvements into the solution and then release them via the support pack so that you can take advantage of them. So,
hey, Pete, real quick, yeah, Pete, real quick on the screen while you're scrolling down, I see that you have some commentary or notes on in-flight diagnostics. There's a couple of questions out there about in-flight / open contracts. Can you talk a little bit about how RAR supports that and what's new in SP03?
I'm not sure about the comment around open contracts. I don't know if I fully understand that, but in general, the idea of the post-flight and in-flight diagnostic is that we're trying to make sure that essentially data quality issues have not given us an answer in RAR that is incorrect, or one that should not be expected, right? So for instance, a wild example would be, maybe you've got a close date and the close date ends up being before the create date or something weird, right? So basically you've mapped all the data properly in your revenue documents, but for some reason, the data coming through, there's something odd about it. So we do a bunch of checks to try to catch some of those situations, and if we find them, then we flag them to you and say, hey, this data is out of, doesn't quite make sense, or this result may not be what you think because there may be something behind it. And so we've tried to make those a little more robust, a little bit more performant in the latest support pack, and we try to have them not only post-flight, meaning after you run some of your processing, you do a full check, but as you're actually running them, if something happens in real time, we try to give you a flag about it.
Sure. Yeah, and just to comment, as Bramasol has a very robust process around data migration, which is a huge part of any type of project, whether it's this kind of project or a lease project, but in particular RevRec, where you have data migration plans, and we have a fairly robust approach to that. And in fact, probably we'll be doing a webinar in the very near future to talk a little bit more about it. So.
Yeah, and Bramasol is familiar with these diagnostics, and they've run them at several customers already. So they can explain kind of how you apply them. The other thing we have in this blog we noted is just we have some recommendations on which notes to apply, and we learned this early on is that RAR is a fairly broad and deep product. It goes it leverages a lot of different pieces like BR plus foundation logic, right? And so what we found in general is that customers get a better experience if they apply all of the notes. Now sometimes that's a tall task because you've got RAR notes and other dependent notes. But that's been our experience, right? If you go across 5 projects, and one project was selectively applying notes and the others were just applying all of the notes and recommended dependent notes, the other projects ran just more smoothly. And so that's really the recommendation, and that's why we tried to put some guidance out on that so customers would be able to go back and check and make sure that they've got the note supply that we would recommend. So yeah, I mean, I think that's probably it for the the updates, the highlights. I mean, this is a complex project. I mean, try to approach it in iterations and the smallest pieces you can as you build up. And I think, right, John, we've seen this at multiple projects, right? That these best practices, especially when you go on over here, they really do work. And so I would strongly recommend following them wherever you can.
Yeah.
And
we'll talk about that in I have a couple of slides at the end here talking about that. And,
sure.
Some other areas.
Let me see if I can stop sharing.
Yep, and I'm gonna do another poll, Pete, while you're trying to unshare. So, folks, I have another poll here, specifically leading into our next discussion, which is, as we all know, the accounting is important and the process of data is important. But at the end of the day, this is all about disclosure reporting and what you report to the street. So, the question we have for you is, what is the status of disclosure reporting? You haven't really started looking at that issue. You're just beginning to consider it. You're developing your own internal tools, or you're leveraging some pre-built tools such as those from Bramasol, or you finished. So let's see where you are. Give it another few seconds. Try to get to a similar level of response. A few more folks out there. We'll give a few more seconds. All right, well, let's close that poll out. Give you another second or two, folks, to vote. All right, so looking at the results of the survey, 21% of you haven't even started, which is not totally surprising given the fact that you're in assessment. 24 are just beginning to consider, and 52% are under development internally, with just a few folks using pre-built tools. So, Pete, I will see if I can take control.
Yeah, you should have it, because I wasn't able to share.
I do indeed. I do indeed. So let me thank everybody. Pete, thank you for taking time. I know you're traveling all over the world these days and spending a great deal of time talking to customers.
Thanks,
so thank
John.
you for taking the time to share with us. I'd like to talk a little bit with you, as Pete talked about. Time is running out, folks, as you know, and Bramasol has a methodology to help you get ready. The bad news is, for those of you who haven't decided on a methodology or haven't made progress, according to Wes Bricker, who is the Chief Accounting Officer for the SEC, that will and can and will very likely have an effect on your ability to not just to borrow, but certainly will have an effect on the cost of capital and cost of equity for you. The good news is, while you may not be able to complete the entire project, those companies who are able to identify the material deficiencies that they might be reporting, but have a specific plan for how they are going to get there, will be able to see not only a no impact to their borrowing rates, but in fact, in many cases, as we saw under SOX compliance, the fact that you have a plan and thoughts around this will help you out in helping lower the cost of capital. One way to do that is to look here at the pilot. So we strongly recommend that you reach out to us or reach out to us and talk about implementing a pilot. That pilot can help you understand what your plans are, understand how you're going to approach it, so that when you get to the process of reporting, that you have very clear plans and can identify how you're going to approach that. So why Bramasol? For those of you who don't know Bramasol, and there's lots of folks who do and some who don't, at the end of the day, Bramasol is really the leader in RevRec services. We've been working on the majority of SAP implementations here in the US, and we've been involved in early testing in such areas as 1.2 and 1.3, work across a lot of different industries. We have the expertise, so we've been working very closely with Pete and the SAP Labs team on recommendations for improvements on the RAR product, as well as developing our own IP to solve some of the more complex problems around things like variable consideration, SSP, scheduling, multi-currency, intercompany, etc. And the other thing that we bring to the table for you is expertise, practical expertise from dozens of projects that we've worked on. In addition, we have a demonstrated methodology called RADAR that we've developed by working on dozens of projects. We've done workshops, pilots. We have what we call our RevRec Academy, which is our training. So our consultants go through a rigorous training to get them up to speed. Many of them are highly seasoned consultants in the area of finance and have revenue accounting experience, both from the old days of SD, RevRec, and other areas, as well as RAR. In addition, Bramasol has pre-built disclosure and management type reports, and I'll talk for a moment about that. So as I hinted, and Pete and I have talked about in the past, at the end of the day, while RAR and all of this exercise is interesting from a management and administration perspective, really the proof of the pudding here is in the eating, and the eating is the delivery of your reports. Those can include, for those of you who are public companies, 10Ks and 10Qs. For private companies, they are quasi-10K, 10Q reports. And as part of that, you have to deliver both the statements. So RAR is the tool that allows you to make sure that your income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, and retained earnings statements are accurate with regard to both the 605 and 606 standards. And you can do dual reporting, and we have a couple of webinars you can check out on dual reporting. But in addition to that, once you've made these statements, you must make notes and disclosures. And those notes and disclosures are both quantitative and qualitative. And Bramasol has prepared a series of reports that are available to you as part of working with Bramasol. They are a pre-built set of reports that are our own intellectual property, and we can talk to you more about how you get those reports. But at the end of the day, we pre-built these reports, and how we chose those reports was working with SAP, working with clients, and working with accounting firms, really understanding what are all of the data areas that you need to have available to you to do accurate reporting. And so we've developed this series of reports. Those reports are available to you both in ABAP as well as through a BW environment. So we're very flexible in how we support you in leveraging and delivering that. And we provide some enhanced analytics on top of that using, you can use BobJ. We've done demos and can show you how you can take advantage of the SAP Analytics Cloud. So in thinking about your project, and for those of you who are still in assessment, for those of you who are under development internally, I encourage you to reach out to us. We have the pre-built tools. We've talked to a number of customers who have spent months developing a single report And we already have a pre-built set of framework reports that you can leverage through your engagement with Bramasol. So, reach out to us and let us know. With that, you can get more information about our webinars. We have 18 plus webinars on SAP RAR and are building reports also on leasing as well as S4HANA. You can access our ebooks here at our resource center. So this is my favorite one because this guy thought that these boats were almost waterproof. At the end of the day, what I would ask all of you is if you believe that your RevRec is almost RevRec ready. If you're almost RevRec ready, please reach out to us, reach out to Pete. Let's have a conversation because we're the guys who can help you get RevRec ready. I don't see any additional questions on here, Pete, to the ones we've asked. I encourage all of you to reach out to us. Thank you very much for your time that everybody's invested here, and I look forward to seeing you on our next webinar on Thursday, September 28th, where we'll probably be talking about topics such as data migration and other key initiatives. Look for our other webinars on leasing. We're doing one on Tuesday to talk about the leasing topic with our partners, Nikisa. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day, and thanks again for joining.